My name is Matt Mazzana. My PowerPoint is on privacy and Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant was a philosopher who lived from 1724 to 1804. As a child, he was brought up in a religious background. Kant explored the idea of ethics as a universal principle rather than a product of religion. He looked to replace religious authority with the authority of reason. Kant's ethics revolve around the idea of a categorical imperative. This imperative stated to act only according to that maximum whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law, very similar to the religious code known as the Golden Rule, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The categorical imperative tests the ethics of an action based on the idea of how you would feel if that action became a universal principle. A simple idea of this would be running a red light. It seems like a harmless action if you're running late for school and there's no cops around and there's no traffic. It might seem harmless just to run a light to save some time. However, Kant would look at it a little differently. He would say that if you ran that light, you'd be under the assumption that anyone could run that same light or any light whenever they felt like. So it very much leaves up to personal ethics if you look at it that way. But what Kant wanted to do was look at things universally and ask yourself, would you be okay if this became a universal way of living? So this is a way of looking at ethics universally. It helps us look at ethics objectively rather than facing temptation to justify our actions based on personal desires. The categorical imperative can also be summed up in another quote by Kant. He says, act as to treat people always as an ends in themselves, never as a mere means. Privacy is a complex issue. So what exactly is privacy? In 1890, Justice Louis Brandeis defined privacy as a right to be left alone. Many credit Samuel Warren and Justice Brandeis for this invention of privacy. Basically, their thought was that privacy was a property that belonged to you. So the media did not have a right to take that property or that privacy from you without your consent. So is privacy a right? Certainly, Brandeis would say yes, but the U.S. Constitution does not specifically mention the right to privacy. Several amendments arguably protect specific rights that fall under a broad category of privacy, but no amendment clearly protects privacy as a whole. Privacy and the freedom of the press, a complicated balance. The issue of privacy in the media can be defined as the struggle between the right to be left alone and the right to know. The balance between these two ideas is very tricky to maintain. Sometimes it's easy to draw a line between what is ethical and unethical, but most of the time it can be extremely difficult. Fortunately for journalists, the law seems to lean towards freedom of speech rather than protection of privacy. The First Amendment greatly protects journalists from being sued, but journalists still have an obligation to act responsibly. Publication of private and sensitive information. Public figures have limited rights to privacy, while private figures are generally allowed to be left alone. So let's say public figures like a mayor or something would have significantly less privacy than the average person walking the street. Liability is often determined by how the information is obtained and how it is newsworthiness. These two are very tricky criteria for how it is obtained. What this basically means is how did you come across the information? Were you given consent to use the information? Was the information publicly on display, or did you discover the information in a private place? The second criteria is this information newsworthy? Who decides what is newsworthy and what's not? That is the main problem with newsworthiness. Is this information relevant to the public? Do they have a right to know this information? So as you can see, newsworthiness is very tricky because there's no concrete definition of what is newsworthy. What's newsworthy to me might not be newsworthy to someone else. For example, let's say the mayor in your town is having an affair. Some people would consider that newsworthy because it's an elected official and it tells you a lot about his character and you would have a right to know that. However, someone might not care about that. They might say, oh, as long as he's doing a good job as mayor, that's fine. Let his private life be private. So as you can see, newsworthiness, it's kind of a person-to-person basis. So to kind of sue on the grounds of newsworthiness is a very complicated thing to do. So what would Kant say about all this? Well, libel and privacy laws very much depend on a case-by-case basis, which is situational ethics, which Kant really didn't prefer. So Kant wanted to look at things more universally, so he would not agree with the current way that ethics is treated in journalism. So Kant would likely determine that if you value privacy over a right to know, then you should be willing to grant everyone, including public figures, the same right to privacy you have. The inverse would also be true. If you value a right to know more than a right to privacy, you should subject yourself to the same lack of privacy that public figures are held to. More simply put, don't share or publish personal or comfortable information about others if you would be uncomfortable with others sharing that similar information about you. So this goes back to kind of the golden rule idea of do unto others. So if you are for privacy, then you're for privacy for all. If you're for the right to know, then you'd be willing to give up some of your own privacy. A common example of invasion of privacy in the media was the recent San Bernardino incident with MSNBC, how they raided the home of reporters. So here's the basic information before I show some of the video below. So MSNBC reporter Kerry Sanders reported live from inside the San Bernardino shooter's home. Sanders basically gave an MTV Cribs-like tour of the whole house, where he pointed at calendars on the wall, rummaged through trash cans, and it was kind of cringeworthy to watch, and there's countless ethical violations. How they gained access to this building was, according to the Washington Post, reporters allegedly gained access to the apartment when a representative from Inside Edition bribed the landlord with $1,000. So the video is quite long, so we're going to watch some of it, just get a basic idea of what happened.
Okay, thank you. So we're walking upstairs here, which what I'm told is a 2-bedroom apartment. And let's just take a look. Okay, here we come around the corner, and this appears to be the baby's room right here. And you can see we have, this is where the 6-month-old child, and here's a computer. I don't actually see a whole lot of dusting here, but as you can see, the hard drive is gone. This is where it would be plugged in. We can see some of the other items here. I can kill the light. Let me turn the light off. There we go. But I don't see anything really on the wall. I want to take a look at the calendar and see if anything's marked on the calendar. And I don't see anything. That's November, so let's go to December. Just see if anything of importance was marked on the calendar here. And nothing there. And it's just a typical sort of calendar with pictures. Now, as I turn around here, I think I find something interesting. As we look at the floor here, this is a prayer rug. So this prayer rug here may have been, I'm not sure which way, but you would face it towards Mecca. It's possible that that prayer rug has been left exactly in the position where it was.
What kind of computer equipment, Kerry? Kerry, can you take a look?
Wait a second. Let me take you over here. This is interesting. Look in this bin. Here you can see all types of things have been shredded. So the FBI must have decided that whatever was in here was not important, because even when documents are shredded, they can be very painstakingly put back together. So let's come into another room here. We're going to pass some of the reporters. Yes, Andrea.
Kerry, I was just wondering what kind of computer equipment before you leave the baby's room there.
So you get the basic idea of that. My favorite part during that was when the guy's kind of breaking down the calendar, and he's like, we have a normal calendar here. This is the month of November. If you turn to this page, there's December. It was just hilarious hilarious yet sad just to watch this kind of reporting and this just digging for anything they could find in this apartment that would be relevant and keep ratings. And it was just an ugly situation, and it turned actually much uglier. The Washington Post did a very good article on this, which I linked to at the end of the paragraph. And they write, then Sanders entered the bathroom and begins rifling through photos in which people, perhaps other than the attackers, are vaguely identifiable. And in his very own narration, Sanders explains just how imprecise live televised apartment invading can be. He says, I'm going to guess that there are the photographs of Malik, so this is the first time. This may be. Okay, we have quite a number of photographs here, but we don't know. We don't know if it's her. So basically, he's rummaging through the photographs here without any idea of who these photographs are. And the people who are doing live coverage, you can hear people in the background, are saying, don't show the photos, don't show the photos. So of course what Sanders does is he shows the photos. In the next paragraph, Sanders is told, stop showing pictures, and then shows a California driver's license of the shooter right up to the camera where you can see all the information about him. And then he finally heeds their warning of not showing pictures and listens to them. He says, I take it we don't want to see the pictures. Why don't I sort through this and then reveal what we have? So finally, like 5 minutes into the video, he understands. He actually heeds their warning of not to show pictures and he has some ethical backbone, but really not that much. Another recent incident was a Hulk Hogan versus Gawker case, and this is an extremely complicated case because you're dealing with some strange names here and personas, and it's kind of confusing, but I will do the best I can to explain this. So former wrestler Terry Bollea, also known as Hulk Hogan, had sex with his former best friend's wife, Heather Clem, while his former friend, whose name is Bubba the Love Sponge, secretly taped the incident. So during this time, Hulk Hogan was very depressed. He just got divorced. And according to Hogan's account, his friend, the Love Sponge, as he's called, gave Hogan permission to sleep with his wife. However, Hogan did not know that this was secretly being filmed, and that's where things get very ugly. So there was a 30-minute video of this thing that was anonymously emailed to Gawker, and then Gawker published a small portion of this video with commentary over it. Now, Bollea and his lawyers claim that this video was not newsworthy and caused Bollea emotional stress and harm. And Bollea, also known as Hulk Hogan, has a case here because obviously it was embarrassing and you don't want that information out there. But he also got fired from his job with WWE at the time. So he got fired as an on-screen. He was an on-screen persona, and then he got fired. All of his merchandise was removed from the website, and he lost a lot of money because he was fired. Gawker, on the other hand, Gawker didn't really agree with Bollea's claim that this was not newsworthy and that he had a right to privacy. Gawker claims that because Hulk Hogan and Terry Bollea, because they have bragged about his sex life in the past on radio stations and such, Gawker argued that he did not have an expectation or a right to privacy because of this, which is kind of arguable in of itself and up for debate. But Hogan countered this argument by saying, yes, I do have a right to privacy because I am Terry Bollea. Hulk Hogan was the person who went on these radio shows and such and bragged about his sex life. I am Terry Bollea, and Terry Bollea was the one in the video. Hulk Hogan might not have a right to privacy, but Terry Bollea does. So, as you can see, things got very confusing at this point, but the courts actually ruled with Hulk Hogan and forced Gawker to pay him a settlement on the issue. So what would Immanuel Kant say about this mess? I think Kant would obviously recognize that Hogan was in the wrong here with sleeping with his best friend's wife, even though he was given consent from the Love Sponge. I still think that Kant would come down on him for that. However, what we really want to focus on here is was Gawker, was what they did ethically and morally okay? And I believe Kant would say no, because this is very, very sensitive information about someone and ruined his life. And would Gawker, or the owner of Gawker, want someone doing this about him? Would he want someone to tape his private sex life unknowingly and post it on the website? Absolutely not. So it kind of goes back to the do unto others thing that Kant was talking about earlier, along with the golden rule. How if Gawker, the owner of Gawker, would want someone doing this to him, then why would he do it to Hulk Hogan? Another issue with this is, was it newsworthy at all? And I think personally, I think it's absolutely not newsworthy. Whether Hulk Hogan's sex life does not impact the public at all. I don't think, arguably, no one's sex life impacts the public at all. So to have that information out there, to have video out there, the only reason for that was for Gawker to gain clicks and to gain money. And it was disgusting that they exploited someone in this way. Thank you for watching my presentation. Here are the references that I used. And if you want to watch the full video, you can click on the YouTube link, the full video of the MSNBC incident, because what went on in that coverage was very interesting, and it's kind of funny and sad at the same time to watch.